Good evening, and welcome to Chronicles at Dusk, a place where stories gently guide you into sleep. Tonight, we'll take a journey not just across space, but deep into time. Far, far back, to an age long before people, before cities, before even flowers had bloomed. Back then, the Earth was a different world. Vast deserts stretched under red skies. Thick forests whispered in the breeze. Warm seas rolled over land that no longer exists. And across it all, strange and ancient creatures roamed. Giant reptiles, early mammals, and many more we still don't fully understand. This is the Mesozoic Era, the age of reptiles. A chapter of Earth's story that lasted nearly 186 million years. It was a time of change, of survival, and of life adapting in breathtaking ways. It began slowly, in the quiet after Earth's greatest extinction. Most life had vanished, but in the stillness, something new began. Small creatures emerged. Forests grew again, and slowly, the first dinosaurs took their first steps. The land shifted, the air warmed, the oceans spread, and life, in all its wild and wonderful forms, kept going. So now, close your eyes. Let the deep past surround you. Imagine the scent of ancient ferns. Feel the warmth of a sun that shined 250 million years ago. And listen as we begin the story of the Mesozoic Era. It starts in the early Triassic, where life is beginning again. The early Triassic began in silence. Just before this, Earth had suffered the worst extinction in its history, the Great Dying. Almost all life in the oceans had vanished. Most animals on land were gone too. The world was quiet, empty, as if life itself had nearly disappeared. This great loss came from massive volcanic eruptions in what we now call Siberia. These eruptions filled the air with heat-trapping gases, warming the planet quickly and sharply. The oceans turned acidic. Oxygen levels dropped. Most sea creatures couldn't survive. On land, the air was dry and dusty. Deserts stretched under a pale, tired sun. Winds blew slowly over cracked ground, stirring up dust that hung in the sky. A single massive landmass, the supercontinent Pangaea, covered most of the Earth. Because it was so big, its weather was extreme: hot, dry summers and cold, bitter winters. Life had to fight hard just to stay alive. The oceans were quiet and empty, like broken glass slowly being pieced back together. But here and there, new life began to return. Early marine reptiles like Cretaceous slipped through the warm, shallow waters. Some ancient fish and amphibian relatives began to reappear. On land, the earliest relatives of dinosaurs, small reptiles called archosaurs, started to explore the open spaces. They were few in number, moving carefully through the dusty forests. True dinosaurs hadn't yet arrived. For now, the stage was only just being set. Plants, too, struggled to come back. Ferns and seed ferns held on in scattered patches of green. Forests were rare. Most of the land was bare and dry. The skies were often hazy with dust, casting a pale light over the land, as if the world was still holding its breath. This was a time of slow healing. Life was fragile, but it had not given up. Little by little, the Earth began to recover, and the story of the Mesozoic Era quietly moved forward. As time moved on, the Earth slowly began to heal. In the Middle Triassic, the climate grew calmer. The air was warmer, but not harsh. Gentle rains returned. The seasons softened, and life found more space to breathe. The oceans, once nearly empty, were full of movement again. Sleek ichthyosaurs, fast swimmers that looked a bit like dolphins, darted through the clear blue waters. Nearby, nothosaurs with webbed feet and long necks hunted fish along the shore. Coral reefs, once broken and bare, were coming back to life. They grew slowly into bright, underwater cities, full of tiny creatures and colorful fish. On land, the early archosaurs, the ancient cousins of crocodiles, dinosaurs, and pterosaurs, became more common. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4. Some hunted, some grazed. They were slowly taking over, while the older rulers of the land, the mammal-like therapsids, faded into the background. Forests spread across the land. Tall conifers reached toward the sun. Strange plants called cycads, which looked like a mix between ferns and palm trees, grew thick and green. These plants fed a growing number of plant eaters and in turn brought more life into the food web. The Middle Triassic was a time of renewal. Slowly, the Earth was balancing itself again. Life was no longer just surviving, it was beginning to thrive. It felt like the planet had taken a long, deep breath and was ready to begin a new song. By the late Triassic, Earth had changed again. The world was warm, mostly dry, but not lifeless. Across the supercontinent of Pangaea, strong seasonal rains came and went. These rains filled rivers and carved out wetlands, quiet green places in a dry and dusty land. Dinosaurs were no longer rare. They were spreading, growing, and thriving. Hunters like Herrerasaurus moved through forests, alert and swift. Plant eaters like Plateosaurus wandered between the trees, munching on ferns and soft plants. They weren't giants yet, but they were on their way. Above the forests, pterosaurs, the first flying reptiles, glided on the wind. In the rivers and swamps, the early relatives of crocodiles waited, still and quiet, watching the world move around them. And at night, small furry creatures crept in the shadows. These were the earliest ancestors of mammals, tiny survivors, hidden away, slowly adapting. The forests were thick and changing. Tall conifers reached for the sky. Tough, palm-like cycads filled the spaces in between. Ferns and seed plants blanketed the forest floor. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. Insects buzzed through the trees, and leaves rustled gently in the warm breeze. But near the end of this time, Earth changed again. Volcanic eruptions shook the land. The air shifted, and once more, many forms of life disappeared. It wasn't as large as the Great Dying, but it was enough to clear the way. And from that clearing, something new would rise. Next comes the Jurassic, the heart of the age of dinosaurs. As the stormy Triassic faded, the Earth turned a new page. The early Jurassic began, in the quiet that followed another extinction, not as devastating as the Great Dying, but still powerful. Many species vanished, but in their absence, space opened for new life to grow. The giant landmass Pangaea, which had once stretched from pole to pole, began to break apart. Slowly, it split into two vast continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. This slow drifting of the land changed the oceans, the winds, and the world's weather. The earth became warmer, wetter, kinder. Rain returned more often, feeding deep green forests that stretched far and wide. Tall conifers, ancestors of today's pine and redwood trees, reached high into the sky. Below them, thick stands of cycads, short, palm-like plants, grew in the shade. Ginkgo trees, with their fan-shaped leaves, rustled softly in the breeze. Together, these plants created lush homes for animals of all kinds. Dinosaurs now truly began to thrive. Sleek hunters like Dilophosaurus moved quietly through the trees, alert and quick. Plant eaters like Mesospondylus traveled in herds, stretching their long necks to nibble on ferns and cycads. As they fed and moved, they shaped the land, making space for even more life. In the oceans, marine reptiles ruled the waves. Plesiosaurs, with their long necks and powerful flippers, glided through the sea. Ichthyosaurs, swift and streamlined, chased fish with graceful speed. Above the forests, pterosaurs soared through the sky. Their wings caught the wind with ease, bringing movement and sound to the air. And below, hidden in the undergrowth, tiny early mammals scurried through the night. They stayed small and careful, feeding on insects and seeds. But within them were the beginnings of something new. Warm blood, soft fur, and the quiet strength to endure. This was a time of quiet energy. The earth had survived. And now, in every forest, sea, and sky, life was growing once more, steady, gentle, and full of promise. Middle Jurassic was a time of warmth and rising seas. Ocean waters crept inland, flooding the lowlands and forming wide, shallow seas near the edges of continents. These warm waters came alive with color and motion, turning into peaceful underwater worlds filled with life. Everywhere in the sea, ammonites drifted, spiral-shelled creatures floating like tiny castles. Alongside them, large marine reptiles like pliosaurs moved with power and grace. With strong jaws and short necks, they hunted fish and smaller animals in the deeper waters. On land, dinosaurs grew bigger and more diverse. Gentle giants like Brachiosaurus towered over the trees. Their long necks helped them reach leaves no other creature could touch. These massive plant eaters moved slowly through forests and open plains, their heavy footsteps leaving soft echoes in the earth. Not far behind came the hunters. Allosaurus, with sharp teeth and powerful legs, became one of the top predators of this age. These meat-eaters chased their prey across ancient landscapes, keeping balance in the growing web of life. Above them all, the skies were full. Pterosaurs soared with wide wings, gliding high and low, from quick little flyers to giants that rode the winds with ease. True birds hadn't appeared yet, but some dinosaurs had begun to grow feathers. These early feathers weren't for flying, but likely kept them warm or helped them show off to one another. The forests were rich and deep, full of tall conifers and soft beds of ferns. Moss and leafy plants covered the forest floor. The air hummed with insects, and leaves whispered as reptiles slipped quietly through the undergrowth. This was a time when life was thriving, steady, strong, and spreading across every corner of the land and sea. The late Jurassic began as the continents continued to drift apart, reshaping oceans and changing the world's climate once again. Warm, humid air settled across the planet. Much of Earth became tropical, lush, green, and full of life. This was the golden age of dinosaurs. Huge plant eaters called sauropods roamed the land. Creatures like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus walked in slow, peaceful herds. With their long necks, long tails, and massive size, they looked like moving forests made of flesh and bone. As they fed on trees and plants, they changed the land itself. Other dinosaurs thrived too. The bird-hipped group, called ornithischians, included the famous Stegosaurus with its tall plates and spiked tail. These armored animals moved slowly, a sharp contrast to the fast and fierce meat-eaters that lived alongside them. Predators like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus ruled the land. They had strong legs, sharp teeth, and sharp senses, always alert, always ready to hunt. Their world was a careful balance, where survival meant being fast, strong, or clever. Out in the oceans, life was just as busy. Plesiosaurs with long necks and pliosaurs with strong jaws glided through the water. ammonites and belemnites, soft-bodied sea creatures with spiral or bullet-shaped shells, floated and swam in the waves, drifting like decorations in the sea. Above the forests, flying reptiles soared. Pterosaurs had grown larger and more varied. Some darted through the air like birds, while others glided high on wide wings, catching the wind and watching the world below. The forests were still ruled by conifers and cycads. There were no flowers yet, but the greenery was rich and dense, filled with insects, lizards, and shadows. And in those shadows, small mammals lived quiet lives. They came out at night, feeding on insects and hiding from danger. Though they were small, they were changing, growing fur, keeping warm, and adapting in secret, waiting for their time to come. The late Jurassic was a time of giants and gentle giants, of predators and prey, forests and oceans, sky and silence. Life danced across the land beneath a warm sun, moving slowly, beautifully, through deep time. The early Cretaceous began as Earth kept slowly changing. The great supercontinent, Pangaea, was breaking apart more and more. As the land drifted, new oceans formed, and the shape of the world began to look a little more like it does today. The climate stayed warm. There were no ice caps at the poles, just wide skies, soft breezes, and long days. Shallow seas flooded the edges of the continents, creating calm, sunlit waters full of life. Coastal plains stretched far and wide, where rivers flowed gently and forests grew thick and green. Something new was blooming across the land. The first flowering plants, called angiosperms, appeared quietly, like little sparks of color. Their blossoms opened to the light, and insects came to visit, carrying pollen from one flower to the next. These small changes would, over time, transform the land into something more colorful and rich than ever before. Dinosaurs still ruled this world. In the south, Argentinosaurus, one of the largest animals to ever walk the earth, moved slowly across the land. Its neck stretched toward the treetops, and its massive feet pressed deep into the ground. Nearby, along rivers and lakes, the mighty Spinosaurus stalked its prey. With a long snout and strong limbs, it hunted fish in the water and small creatures on land. Plant eaters called ornithopods, fast and watchful, moved in herds. They stood on two legs, always alert, ready to flee from danger. In the forests, small feathered dinosaurs darted through the underbrush. These nimble hunters were closely related to birds, and some may have chirped or called softly in the trees. In the oceans, fish swam in shimmering schools, their bodies moving like silver ribbons through the blue. And deeper still, plesiosaurs and mosasaurs glided through the water, long, strong, and silent. High above, early birds filled the skies. Some soared, Others flitted from tree to tree. Their feathers came in many colors and shapes, and their calls echoed through the forest canopies. And still, in the quiet places, small mammals lived their secret lives. They crept through the leaf litter at night, gathering seeds and insects. They were careful and clever, with fur to keep them warm and sharp senses to guide them in the dark. The early Cretaceous was a peaceful time of slow, gentle change. Flowers opened. New creatures moved through land, sea, and sky. Life whispered its way forward, quiet, steady, and beautiful beneath a golden sun. The late Cretaceous was a time full of life, color, and quiet energy. By now, the continents had drifted even farther apart, reshaping the land and sea. Inland seas stretched deep into the continents. New coastlines formed. Forests and wide open plains filled the world, bathed in warm light and gentle breezes. The air was humid and full of life. Flowering plants, now spread across nearly every landscape, painted the world in soft colors. Bright blossoms opened beneath the sun. Bees buzzed from flower to flower. Butterflies fluttered on the wind. Early birds, small and feathered, helped spread pollen through the trees. These flowers brought new food, and the herbivorous dinosaurs responded. Peaceful hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, gathered in large herds, grazing calmly across the meadows. They may have called to each other with low, humming sounds, filling the air with a quiet chorus. Nearby, great ceratopsians, like Triceratops, moved slowly through the forests. Their heads were crowned with large horns and wide frills, which may have been used to protect themselves or to show off in gentle standoffs with others of their kind. Their footsteps were steady, and their world was rich with greenery. But the land also had its giants. In the north, Tyrannosaurus rex roamed. It was massive and powerful, a quiet shadow in the trees. With strong legs and deep-set eyes, it moved with purpose. When it walked, the ground may have trembled just a little. It was the top predator, yet it lived in a world filled with beauty too. Out at sea, the oceans were alive with motion. Mosasaurs, enormous marine reptiles, glided through the deep, their bodies smooth and strong. Plesiosaurs swam alongside them with graceful flippers, while schools of shimmering fish darted between them. Ancient ammonites spiraled slowly in the current. Sharks, silent and sleek, passed through the water in search of prey. Even the mammals, still small and quiet, were changing. Some had new teeth to chew different foods. Others developed keen hearing or sharper noses. They crept through the undergrowth and the dark places, careful and curious, learning how to survive in a world ruled by giants. But one day, everything changed. About 66 million years ago, a great asteroid fell from the sky. It struck the Earth with terrible force. Ash and fire darkened the skies. Many lives ended quickly. Dinosaurs, ammonites, flying reptiles, and more. It was the end of an age. Yet from that loss, something new would come. The mammals who had lived quietly in the shadows would begin to rise. Forests would regrow, skies would clear, and slowly, gently, a new world would begin. One step at a time. The late Cretaceous was the final chapter of the dinosaurs' long reign, a time of wonder, warmth, and gentle, growing life beneath ancient stars. And so our journey through the Mesozoic Era comes to an end. From the depths of ancient seas to forests filled with giants, this was a time of great change and quiet strength. Life faced extinctions, shifting lands, and new climates, but always found a way to begin again. Dinosaurs rose and ruled, flowering plants bloomed, and the first birds took to the skies. Even as the era ended, its echoes remained in the birds we see today and in the earth shaped by their time. Thank you for traveling through these ancient ages with me, here at Chronicles at Dusk. Until our next story, may your dreams be long and peaceful, like the timeless rhythm of the world beneath your feet. Good night.